Yeah, I mean, the standards are boy, and I'm glad we got Brad. Let's bring Brad up because I do want to talk. We're going to talk about list and welcome to the show, Brad. But I kind of want to pick your brain about roster building as well, and I wanted to ask, and maybe I'm putting you on the spot here, and tell me. I wanted to ask you, who's your favorite young GM in this league right now, and what sets them apart? Because one of my concerns is that for the most part, I agree with the modern sort of environment. We talk about running back devaluation, linebacker devaluation. We talk a lot about here in Philadelphia. Um, but it's like if everybody's doing the same thing, then it becomes all right, who does the same thing the best? So who stands out to you amongst sort of the new age GMs?
Yeah, I think I'll give you one that's been entrenched for a little bit and one that's brand new, but I'm impressed so far. So Brandon Bean in Buffalo, I think has done a very good job thus far. Some missed draft picks here and there, does some things I don't love, but for the most part, does a very good job. Just like Philadelphia, a ton of early extensions, prioritizes premium positions, tackle, edge, wide receiver, etc. And just has built this entire thing around Josh Allen, just always trying to improve his quarterback circumstances and anything he can do to help this offense improve. So I think he's one. And then a new guy that just started this past offseason, but I love his first offseason. That is Monty Ossenfort in Arizona. So I know
Wow.
they kind of tore the
Oh,
whole thing down.
whoa.
They're kind of
Yeah.
starting over. But look, I think you don't have a contending team right now. You have a competitive team right now. And so instead of trying to kind of put some band-aids on things, look, you trade down in the draft, you get Houston's first rounder for next year, could be a top 5, top 10 pick. You get their third round pick next year, and you get Tennessee's third round pick next year for Will Levis. You could have acquired a top 5 pick and then 2 top 75 picks. You don't spend any money. You just get cheap, get young, and kind of start over. I appreciate that they didn't try to, kind of be mediocre. Just be bad and then be good, quicker, later on.
Well, then I got to follow up with this question. Since John took you there, I see one of the latest articles you put up on Pro Football Focus was a look at the Minnesota Vikings' future rebuild or contender. What are the Vikings? Where does Kwesi Adolfo-Mentu fall on this level of respect list? Has he done a nice job in your eyes since taking over? Do you like what he's doing with the roster this year?
Yeah, they're very, very interesting. Where they've been trying to toe this line of staying competitive, but also getting way younger and rebuilding a lot of this roster. And last year, look, they outperformed their talent. Their win loss record was not indicative of how good their team was, and so I give him kudos for still moving on from franchise cornerstones like Adam Thielen and Eric Kendricks and all these players. I wouldn't love the idea of trading Danielle Hunter. I think he still is a very good player, and maybe that does happen. But it's tough. Basically, Kirk Cousins makes it so they can't go full scale rebuild, but they also aren't going to actually contend, and they're kind of stuck in purgatory a little bit. And I think I think he does realize we want to get way younger. Their defense last year was top 10 in snaps by older players, like a couple things I mentioned in the article. But nevertheless, over the course of all of his moves, I do think he has a cohesive plan. I think he knows what he's trying to accomplish. It's just tough sometimes. There's forces pulling you in different directions. But this
Yeah.
season will be
Yeah.
big, and then figuring out quarterback going forward is everything.
Well, and I want to throw the New York Giants into that mix as well because if you look at Minnesota, young GM, Giants, young GM, they both probably overachieved. The Giants upsetting the Vikings in the playoffs, even more so. They both have good teams, but not great teams. But they're both in the NFC as well, where we look at and say it's not the AFC here. The way they do, the way Minnesota did business this offseason would make sense to me if they were in the AFC. It doesn't make sense to me in the NFC for this reason, Brad. You know, Andy Reid's mentality back to 1999 was like be consistently good, and then if the stars align, you might make a run. You might not match up with the Eagles. You might not match up with the 49ers, but you get the right injury on the right week in the right year. And all of a sudden, you're in a position to take advantage of that and maybe shock the world. Is there any room for that in the new age sort of mentality and saying, all right, you're not going to be bad because Kirk Cousins is too good, but we're never going to put Kirk Cousins in the Burrow, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence category. So you won 13 games, even though you shouldn't have. And you talk about all those late game wins, which are probably not going to manifest themselves again. But then again, you had one of the worst defenses in football. So Brian Flores is going to make that better just by showing up. I guess I don't get it. Like, I can't win 13 games and say, all right, you know what? We overachieved. But yet, I keep going. I apologize, but I think it's important to be honest with yourself. So I'm torn. Like, I like that Kwesi's being honest with himself, but I don't know if he necessarily understands the landscape.
Oh, I think that is one of the tough parts about it is that, like you said, if they were in the AFC and they're sitting there saying, look, there's 10 teams better than us, like, let's just try to, be realistic with where we're at. When you look at the NFC, I mean, in particular, their division is not a very good division, the NFC North.
Yeah.
And then I think, San Francisco, Philadelphia, Dallas, outside of those teams, I don't think anyone, you can hang your hat on as a legit contender. I like Seattle, I like a couple other teams, but they have plenty of question marks in their own right. So I do get that. That's why I do think trading Danielle Hunter, in my mind, would be a mistake. When you look at the moves they've made, look, Adam Thielen, you watched the tape last year. He lost a step. I think his deal in Carolina was too much money. Eric Kendricks, pretty good player, but again, 30-plus-year-old off-ball linebacker. Like, Za'Darius Smith trade, he needed a new contract, so it kind of complicates it a little bit. I'm sure they would have kept it at his dollar amount, but he got a raise and got a year chopped off his deal so he can get back to the market. The one for me where I would then fall into your bucket is Danielle Hunter's 29 years old or going to play the full season at 29. Yes, he's had injuries, but double-digit sacks, 70-plus quarterback pressures per our charting, great against the run as well. I think Brian Flores would love to use him in any capacity he can. That's the one where I would say, okay, now I don't get it. To this point, I think they just moved on from some older guys and gotten younger, which I get. I know Dalvin Cook's 27, but, $10.5 million salary. Again, with him, yes, the volume stats are there. The production is there. He had our highest stuff run rate in the NFL the last 2 seasons at 24%. That means just runs for 0 or negative yardage. So, just trying to get more efficient and get younger. But yeah, long answer short, the Hunter one, I would then fall in your bucket of being like, well, hey, you probably still can make the playoffs. Like, why not just give it one more chance, even while getting cheaper, and then maybe really hit the reset button in 2024 and beyond.
All right. This is from the list you guys have been putting out. I think it's a very interesting dichotomy. Who was the best defense in the National Football League last year, Brad?
I would say probably the San Francisco 49ers. I don't even know the list you're referring to.
You don't even have to expand. I was just looking for the answer.
Yeah, I'll go Niners.
Who was the second best defense in the National Football League?
Probably Philly or Dallas. I'll go Dallas. You won't like that? I'll go Dallas.
Oh, okay. I for these purposes, I'm going to accept your first answer. Sorry, your second answer will not be accepted. San Francisco 1, Philadelphia 2. Where do the linebackers of the Philadelphia Eagles rank on Pro Football Focus's going into this season?
Probably 32nd. They have never cared about the position. They've never invested draft capital in it. They've never spent on it.
They beat the Rams. They were 31, Brad.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, good for them. That's higher than I would have guessed.
Where are the San Francisco 49ers ranked at linebacker going into this season?
First, for the second year in a row.
So the team with the best defense from last year has the best linebacking core, and the team with the second best defense from last year has the next to last linebacking core. Certainly two different philosophies of the two organizations. I know the answer is somewhere in the middle, but who's closer to right? San Francisco and the emphasis they put on linebackers, or the Philadelphia Eagles and the emphasis they refuse to put on linebackers?
Well, they're both right for putting all the emphasis in the world on defensive line, and then the rest is kind of gravy, right? So, yeah, look, I'll go Philadelphia because I do think it's not a position I would want to spend a ton of resources on. Look, Warner was a third-round pick and just became the best off-ball linebacker in football. You might as well pay the guy, but they are where they are on that list because they just continue to pour resources into that defensive line. They have for a very long time. Obviously, Hargrave just switched camps this offseason. That is why they're that high. And the best defense is Dallas as well. Like I mentioned, they understand that defensive line kind of controls everything, on defense.
The Chicago Bears too. Your Bears, Brad. They spent a ton of money on off-ball linebackers. I know Trevor did, I believe, at Pro Football Focus, did the linebacker tiers. He put Tremaine Edmonds in the second tier 2, which I'd agree with, and put TJ Edwards in tier 3. And there's another young GM kind of going against the grain. I kind of respect that, to be honest. I'm not sure if it's the way to go, but I kind of respect people that zig when others zag. Jody knows I'm a big fan of Moneyball, and I love the movie and Billy Bean. And when they say, hey, it's not about buying players, it's about buying wins, it's always stuck with me. It still sticks with me. I don't know. Is there something to zigging when everybody else is zagging?
There's my favorite quote in the history of Bill Belichick, and he's obviously had a lot of them, but it's probably 15 years ago now. So the Patriots used to run a 4-3, almost exclusively, or maybe they ran a 3-4. Excuse me, they ran a 3-4, and they switched to a 4-3. And a reporter asked him, "Why did you guys switch the defense?" And he said, "When I started running the 3-4, it was Pittsburgh, New England, and I think Vegas, the Raiders. They were the only teams that ran the 3-4." So he goes, finding outside linebackers that could pass rush was easy, and finding big, one technique nose tackles was easy. He goes, now there's 18 teams in the NFL that run a 3-4, so it's easier to find 4-3 defensive ends and 3 technique D tackles. So he literally just changed it because of supply and demand of the players available. So yeah, I think there is credence to what you say, where if everyone treats everything the exact same, then maybe you can zag a little bit. I think Chicago also probably in their mind said, we were going to give Roquan Smith this money. Now we get a second and a 5th round pick from Baltimore and still spend this money on that position. You can kind of, maybe have qualms with that theory, but I think that was probably their thinking as well, as they already in their mind were prepared to spend at that position.
How much do you think the Eagles going to miss the linebackers they let get out the door, TJ Edwards and Kaiser White? We know they're going to turn over the defense to Nakobe Dean. He's going to be the guy who's going to call the signals. I just flat out love the kid when he was at Alabama and think he's going to hit the ground running and probably be pretty close to what TJ Edwards gave, maybe a little bit more dynamic than what TJ Edwards gave him last year. They're going to miss Kaiser White. The Eagles have once again shown linebacker, they don't care. Are they going to pay a price for it this year?
It's a mean answer, but no. I mean, because what they do enables them to do this. I like Nicholas Morrow. He's actually a former Bear. I can't believe Philly got him for a minimum contract. I didn't think he was going to sign a huge contract, but I thought he would be similar to Kaiser White. 1 year, $3 million, some incentives, that type of contract. He's a consistent player. He can play Will. He can play Mike. He can do a lot of different things. Injuries have kind of slowed him down a little bit, but he's a good football player. And then, Nakobe Dean of Georgia, obviously, everyone knows that story. So, look, TJ Edwards was a very important piece for them last year. Got better as the season went on, blossomed into a true 3-down player, all those things. But, yeah, short answer, no, because the defensive line is maybe not better, but Hargrave's a big loss, but could be as good with all the new pieces you bring in the first round. Maybe is better, and that's what matters.
Brad, nobody knows more about contracts than you. That covers this league. Tremendous respect for your knowledge there. Over to cap.com as well as Pro Football Focus. Maybe it's unfair, but you bring up Nicholas Morrow. It's not just the Eagles. There's 31 other teams. And they not only got Nicholas Morrow for what they got him, zero guaranteed money. That scares me. Should it scare me? When you see contracts like that, does your antenna go up?
I would say this on the Eagles or a team, coming off a Super Bowl, it's less. I wouldn't be shocked if he had a better offer from another team, but it was, $1.5 million instead of 1.2. And yeah, maybe $500,000 was guaranteed or whatever the case may be, which basically just guarantees you a spot on the training camp roster and not much else. So yeah, no, he's on the Eagles. It's basically this guy came here because he wants to have a spotlight, play a bunch of primetime games, play behind the best defensive line in football after probably playing behind the worst last year in Chicago, and build his cachet to get a better contract after the year. It wouldn't scare me too much, but I understand the question, of course.
Let me follow up with salary cap question. Last year, the Eagles were able, when they needed it, land 2 veteran defensive linemen to give them a little extra push against the run, guys off the scrap heap, so to speak, in season. And yeah, both of those guys helped the Eagles because they were susceptible to the run and not as bad when they added the 2 veteran guys. If they were to do that again this year, guys who aren't on a roster now, don't really want to go to a camp, want to be able to jump onto a team that they think has got a chance to make a deep playoff run. Eagles well positioned to do that with where they're at in the salary cap right now.
Yeah, you're forgetting too, Robert Quinn, the third guy to throw in the mix.
And we're trying to forget Robert Quinn. That was intentional, in case you didn't pick up on it. Mr. Chicago wants to rub salt in the Eagle fans' wound.
Correct.
Yeah, we suckered a 4th-round draft pick out of you guys for Robert Quinn, who did diddly for us and diddly for you. Thank you very much for that, Brian.
Of course, yeah. Tyler Scott looking good in camp. Cincinnati wide receiver looking good. So anyway, yeah, they do. They're always going to have that cushion, that little room in their budget to have a couple in-season moves. And I think Howie has shown he wants to win a Super Bowl. He is trying to, again, you never use the words all in, so to speak, but I think they are viewing that there's a window right now. They have a ton of really good young players, but also your Fletcher Coxes, your Brandon Grahams, guys that you can't take for granted that won't be around forever. I think if a similar situation pops up where, they feel susceptible to a certain area, they will still be in the market for, hey, give this guy a call, kind of waiting for a call all off season and bring him in, mid-season or whatever the case may be. I think they'll be in that market again.
Do you sense, you mentioned Monty Ossenfort, and it's pretty clear that the Arizona Cardinals are kind of tearing things down. We all know who's going to be in the draft next year. A lot of things can happen, but number 1 overall, a lot of people are looking at a potential generational prospect at the quarterback position. Do you think, whether you want to call it tanking, whatever word you want to use, do you think it's going to be more prevalent this year, especially if teams start off and it becomes pretty clearly that we're just not very good?
So that's the thing, is that in my view in the NFL, the only person that can actively tank is the GM. You can just not give your coaching staff a good enough roster to compete, right? You can't actually ask players not to perform. No. You can't make up enough fake injuries and all these things to get guys to just not be out there, because these guys want to earn contracts and keep playing in their career as they should. So the thing you said right at the end there is, if they're off to a bad start, if I'm looking at teams like last year, the Rams, Cooper Kupp probably could have come back at the end of last season, but the Rams said, let's just shut it down and get healthy. If Matthew Stafford and Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp get hurt again this year, they probably have the worst roster in the NFL outside of their top 3 players. I think that's the scenario. Or let's say Kyler Murray's knee isn't, progress is not as great as they'd hoped, and it's week 10. He still hasn't played, and they're 1-9. Just sit him out for the season. Stuff like that, I think. Yes, I mean, he is that level of prospect. I think he is a generational prospect as of right now.
Who out of the top two quarterbacks who went 1-2 in the draft this year, who do you think's got more chance to hit the ground running, first by their own skill sets, their coach and whatever, and the players around them? Who's in the better situation to have the better rookie year out of the 2 quarterbacks drafted 1-2?
I think it's Bryce Young by a mile. So for both reasons, A, for his skill set, I think the most impressive thing that I saw on Bryce Young's tape is his poise, is his pocket presence. It's almost like he has eyes in the back of his head. He is just so calm and composed in the pocket. And people sometimes say, oh, well, it's Alabama. His offensive line this year was not very good, and his receiving core this year was not very good either. So, that excuse does not really exist for me. And then for the ecosystem, look, Frank Reich, I have a lot of respect for, but also you bring in Jim Caldwell, who has a history of working with quarterbacks, working with offenses. Their offensive line is actually an underrated unit. An unfortunate injury in week 18 to right guard Austin Corbett is kind of annoying because I think they'd have like a top 10 offensive line if he was healthy. I don't love their receivers that much at all, though. But then Houston, their offensive line is also solid, 2 good tackles, some other good pieces, but the receivers are, near the bottom of the NFL. And then I do like the new coaching staff. D'Amico Ryan's obviously the head coach. Their offensive coordinator is actually a former PFF guy many, many years ago. So a good ecosystem, but it's not quite, Carolina Panthers level.
All right, Brad. Jody mentioned your piece on Minnesota at Pro Football Focus. I want to talk about your running back market piece that you recently did. The lack of growth at that particular position, grown by 12% since 2011, at least 60% less growth than every other position. What can running backs do? Or is it just they're are we going to see at lower levels great athletes saying, I don't want to play running back. I want to play receiver. I want to play quarterback. I'm not going to get paid to play running back in the NFL.
That's what you got to start to wonder, because I think not only has there basically been no growth, but I think Christian McCaffrey's $16 million per year deal might be the biggest contract at the position for the next 3 or 4 years still. Like, I don't see anyone surpassing it. All the guys this offseason, Barkley, Jacobs, and Jonathan Taylor, I don't think any of them get near there. And it's almost like, are we waiting on like Bijan Robinson to, just be as incredible as he's expected? And maybe he breaks through 3 years from now. Like, that's the only name that kind of comes to mind, because if Taylor can't do it and Taylor has a rushing title and a first-team All-Pro in his second season, then who's going to do it, right? So I wonder, right? If I was, a father or a coach of a player at that position, I would say, hey, go start running some routes out of the slot, or go see what safety feels like, or whatever. Because, I think there is no end in sight for this, and they take the most hits and get are soon to get the least money, because I think centers are going to surpass them. It's a troubling trend.
All right, last one for me. And Brad, we always appreciate it when you come on, even when you stick the knife in about Mr. Quinn. The other trend in the NFL, and it's an entertaining one, and Philadelphia is reaping the benefits of it, but running quarterbacks, guys who will pull the ball down and make plays with their legs. That certainly cuts into the viability of running backs, because if quarterbacks are running it, running backs ain't. But there is the risk. There is the injury possibility. Lamar Jackson did well, got paid, even though he missed the end of the season last year. Is that a trend that has hit its peak? Is it only going to go further? Or do teams now start to think, hey, this is a great +1 additive to our team, but when a guy misses an entire season, 3/4 of the season, because he gets hurt running the football, will they say, wait a minute, we're putting so much money into the quarterback position, he's not even playing? What do you think the trend of the running quarterback in college football plays itself out into the NFL over the next couple of years?
I would say this: there's always going to be a continued trend for guys that are mobile and that can scramble, that can make throws off platform going both directions, that have the athletic ability to potentially run, but maybe we see them teams sort of dial back how often they actually take off, right? But the statue pocket passer, clunky athlete is just not, I think, a guy you want right now, because the ability to extend plays and have the scramble drill and get these explosive receptions and stuff like that is just such a weapon. And then also, like you mentioned, the threat of the run or the threat of taking off, it actually makes things easier for running backs. But I guess maybe then it's, hey, anyone can do this because the defense is so spaced out that the quarterback's threat causes it to be easier for everybody else, that it's not that hard to do the other jobs like running back. But nevertheless, I think that trend will continue. I think what you'll see, though, is like a guy like a Josh Allen or a Jalen Hurts, starting around the midpoint of the season, they'll say, okay, the design run numbers are going to come way down. He can still scramble and all that, but we're not going to dial up, keepers and options and power runs for the quarterback.
At PFF_Brad, make sure you follow Brad Spielberger on Twitter. I see your book, The Drafting Stage, is now available in paperback, so people can get that. Amazon.com with Jason Fitzgerald at Over the Cap. creating a marketplace for NFL draft picks, so you can pick that up with Brad. All right, I'm going to go back to the NFC North because you're a Chicago guy. You used to work for the Vikings. Somebody's got to win that god-awful division. Who's it going to be, Brad? Give me a winner. Give me a winner.
Yeah, someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
I'll go Detroit. I know they're chalk right now. They are the favorite. It's a bad division. It really is. I wouldn't be shocked if a spunky Minnesota team kind of wins it again, but I'll go Detroit. They addressed their secondary, which was very, very bad. Most explosive receptions allowed in the NFL last year. A bunch of very bad metrics. But I like what they did in free agency, adding a bunch of players in. And in the draft, you bring in Brian Branch from Alabama in the second round. I think they'll do it. They did enough to win that division, but they could be like 10-7, with the NFC North crown, because it is a bad group of teams.
Yeah, but if I tell you that there is not going to be a team in the NFC North that's going to lose 11 games, what would you say to me?
Yeah, they're all kind of in that middle spot as well, and obviously the rest of the teams stink. I wouldn't be shocked if every team finished in the 11 through 8 wins. I suppose. Yeah, it wouldn't shock me, but yeah, none of them would be very good, but none of them would be terrible. Yeah,
so,
I hear you.
Does that make it a bad division, like both of you guys just said?
Yeah,
I don't know that it's a bad division.
I should have won mediocre.
There's no doormat in that division.
Yeah.
The doormat is that they get to play like the Falcons and Panthers and Saints and Buccaneers, and you get to play the Rams and the Cardinals. Like that's the doormat. Is that the NFC teams they play against are just, laughably bad.
I was probably too harsh because I do like I think Love's going to be better than people think. Obviously Fields is getting better. Minnesota's still okay. Detroit's right there to be that fourth. You talk about Eagles, Niners, Cowboys, and then there's got to be a 4. I've been going back and forth between Detroit and Seattle as that 4. So it's not terrible.
You want to talk about a bad division? Take residency in the NFC South. That was terrible last year, and I don't see it improving. That Brady guy is no longer there, so there's a good chance that division gets even worse. Brad Spielberger, always a pleasure, buddy. Appreciate whenever you hop on. You do a great job for us. You do a great job for both PFF and also overthecap.com. Thank you much. We'll certainly be getting you back up once the preseason gets underway.
Great. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Brad.
Spielberger at Pro Football.
Hey, Brad got me more excited about Nicholas Morrow. Maybe he took that contract because he wanted to play here. Maybe.
You buying that?
Not fully, but
yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah, but he makes a good point. What's the difference between 1.6 and 600 grand? Because that's what they gave to all the other 1-year guys, 600 grand, right? What's the difference between taking that with a bad team and taking no guaranteed money with a good team? You might have a better chance to get back on the market. So he brings up a good point at least.
I kind of disagree with both of you. I think you put too much emphasis on the fact that he got no guaranteed money. Brad's right. If he gets 400, the Eagles aren't going to cut him right now. I know they could, but they're not going to cut him. And I don't think even if they go out and get another linebacker, I don't think they'll cut him. I think he'll be part of their depth. They're going to tell him, oh, by the way, you better be able to play special teams. But I don't think he's going to get cut. So who cares whether once he's a vested veteran, once he plays the first game of the season, his entire contract becomes guaranteed. So I understand that you can read some things between the lines with a guy who signs as a free agent and how much guaranteed money he gets. Not a tremendous amount of import into it, as Brad explained. But I think he overstates what he did on the field. I'm looking at the plays that he did or didn't make. They were a bad defense. He was the best player on the bad defense. I'll use the McMullen
20 points a game.
20-point scorer on a losing NBA team.
Yeah.
He got a whole bunch of tackles last year on the Bears, but the Bears defense wasn't good. So that's why I've got concerns about Nicholas Morrow, not because he didn't get guaranteed money. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. You know what we got to do? Put a bow on the show, put a bow on the week here on Birds 365.